everybody. Welcome to the Psychedelic Counselor and Sensible Psychedelics. And today we are talking to someone who is very prominent in the conservative therapist world that I think has a really great perspective, has a bunch of questions for me. And I have some questions for her that I would love for you to hear our conversation. Her name is Soad Tabrizi, and I will let her introduce herself and let you know what she's up to. Thank you so much
Karen.
for coming.
I'm actually really excited about this conversation because I do have a lot of questions for you. So stay tuned. But yes, I am Soad Tabrizi. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and based out of Orange County, California. I have a very small private practice that's 100% telehealth. I don't take on new clients anymore. I just kind of see my old clients for checkups and check-ins. And the reason for that is because I'm dedicating most of my time in making sure I equipped and help and support conservatives in our field. My dedication is to make sure that they are well-informed, that they feel like they have a space, that they are heard, and that someone is constantly being their cheerleader, because in the industry, as I'm sure you know, and very aware, in our industry, conservatives are really shunned and made fun of and told many times over and over again that we don't belong in this field, especially if you voted for Trump. So I'm pushing back on that as much as possible. We have a Facebook group filled with conservative counselors. I have a directory that I own on my own, separate from the group, that is conservativecounselors.com, where it's basically, we're rivaling Psychology Today. I am Psychology Today's worst nightmare. So I'm hoping to be as big as them, if not bigger one day. We do have a lot of therapists and counselors and biblical counselors on there as well, psychologists, psychiatrists. So if you're looking for someone who's more sane and rooted in reality, that's a great place to go. I write a lot. I have a Substack. I write a lot of mental health stuff, obviously, the latest news that's happening in mental health, but I also write about culture and politics because that is something I'm interested in and have always been interested in. So there's a little bit of splash on that as well in there. And then I also am a contributing writer for Human Events, and that one's more news-based, small little column that I have with them. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. I have a Substack, like I said, that I do lives starting next month. Every month, once a month, I will go live with my subscribers, talk to them, answer their questions. I really love connecting with people, and my subscribers are not just counselors. It's anyone who has questions in anything with culture, politics, or mental health. That's my time to kind of give back and give to them for as long as we need to during those lives. So that's what I do.
That is fantastic. And just as a therapist entering this world from 2021 on, I've seen you really spearheading the movement and have always felt like you are representing us, even before I was part of what I'm now calling us as myself as a conservative. And it's still so new for me to say that. So I'm so grateful for conservativecounselors.com. I've gotten great clients myself through that. I signed up a couple of years ago and really good fits. And I think it is because, and I think this is maybe something that mainstream media, tell me what you think, and maybe it's mainly mainstream media and counseling population in general, therapists and clients, they don't know that there are normie or conservative counselors out there that can meet them where they are with their values, with their principles, and not tell them that they have privilege or try to impose progressively liberal values onto them. I think clients are desperate for that clinically neutral standpoint that used to be so common and has disappeared with progressive liberalism.
Yes. And that is what, and it's interesting because most people that go to conservativecounselors.com to find a therapist are not conservative. They're just afraid of going to something else because they're afraid of ideology that's just not rooted in truth. And I think that they don't want their psyche to be affected by that. They kind of need to be told, like, this is reality and you need to kind of have that as your baseline. And they find comfort with conservatives because they know that we champion that. We believe in reality. And and I think that's why they go there. But most of them they're not conservative.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
afraid of their own ideology, which is interesting. It says a lot.
It is so interesting. And I have to say that is reflected in the clients that have come to me, is that they're usually neutral humans who live in very ideologically captured areas, and they don't feel like they can go be vulnerable with someone who is going to tell them that maybe they're a different gender trapped in the wrong body, or something that they're not really based in reality. And of course, when people come to therapy, like you said, they want to know what's real. They recognize that their thinking is off or their feelings are off, and they want something to reference. So I agree with you. I think that's really well put. And to segue into psychedelic work is so important in psychedelic work. And this particular niche is so captured by liberal progressive ideology. I have so much to say about it. And it's painfully captured. I mean, if you imagine, what is it? The stats are 87% of therapists are identify as liberal.
Yes.
And yeah, and like, what is it? 6% identify as conservative, and then the rest are unidentified. So
Correct.
I would imagine
that's the latest.
That's the latest. I would imagine
Mm-hmm.
in the psychedelic world is probably 99% identify as liberal, because it's such a particular niche. So there are only a few of us I've met. I've met 3 that are conservative.
Who are the 3?
Well, I don't know if they want their names out, and this is the very issue.
I'm so sorry. I'm totally
no,
like, tell me who they are so I can be friends with them.
I know. You probably know them already because I met them through the conservative platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
But I mean, that very issue, the fact that I can't say this out loud because it might be dangerous for them, is exactly why you and I are here talking.
Correct. And I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So I'm really curious, as a conservative, what your questions are about psychedelic assisted therapy.
So happy we went there. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I'm open to it. Let me say that. I'm totally open to it. But my biggest question, and I have so many, but this one starts at the top. Ketamine. What is it? Because I don't think conservatives understand, or anyone really. I think the left kind of just knows, oh, a drug that helps, and they're fine with it. And I think conservatives always go into things more cautiously. Like, I want to, before I'm fine with it, I want to understand the roots. I want to know what it does to the body. I want to know the good and the bad. And I appreciate that about conservatives. I like that about us. We don't jump to, well, let's just do it because everyone says to do it and it's good. So what is it for the conservatives that are like, oh, it's a drug and we should stay away? I want to understand what it is, because I have heard great things, great results about it, when done correctly. So please tell me what it is.
I would love to. So I would love to tell you what ketamine is. And I love that conservatives are cautious. And I can really relate to that. I myself have a very cautious approach. I've been doing ketamine assisted therapy since 2020. So ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic that's been used since 1950 in the battlefield, in Vietnam, and is currently being used in ERs and also in veterinary medicine and also in pediatric oncology. So it has a wide variety of uses since the 50s. It's very well studied. It is very safe when used clinically, appropriately, safely. It is for an antidepressant use used in a microdose. So it means that recreational dose that you hear about people doing at raves, it's 100th of that dose. And they discovered that in microdosing, it had the neuroplastic effect. And that is what that's the theory of what treats treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, OCD, all the things that it helps so well. But mainly it's structured. It's prescribed by a psychiatrist or a psychiatric nurse practitioner to the right diagnoses. So it's very safely put through the medical process, medical rule outs, and then that's when you meet with your therapist and have the experience. So there's a lot of container around it. It's not just one and done. And like we talk about it later, we really do the process together. And so you have your blood pressure is monitored during it, you're observed by a medical professional. So does that help answer a little bit?
Yes, it does help answer it. I do. So it is a street drug. It is something that kids use. Okay, okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, like all psychedelics, and just to be clear, it's not classically a psychedelic. It doesn't produce hallucinations. It's an anesthetic that helps you dissociate. And so it's relaxing and sedating. And so, of course, it's unfortunately sold on the streets and in huge doses is given to people in like dance parties and things like that.
And is it addictive?
No, that's the thing about when it's in this low dose. So of course we've heard about Matthew Perry and those kinds of things in the media. Those are really high, unsupervised, non-clinical doses that cause issues. When they're in the small microdose, it's not addictive and it doesn't, you can do it safely once a week for 4 weeks is the protocol. And then people often will come back for a booster a few months later, sometimes a year later. So it is not addictive when used properly.
Okay, got it. Got it. And so when you say that you do ketamine treatment, do they get the prescription from a psychiatrist and then come to you, or does your office provide that? How does that work?
It really depends. At first, so in 2020, I created with an A&P our ketamine program, and it was totally a gray area. So we decided to be as safe as possible and just replicate the research. And the research was all IV bolus, which means it was a push, not a 45-minute infusion. So we had a nurse on site, we had a psychiatrist on site, and then the therapist was in the room. And then we did this all during the pandemic. And then we moved to lozenge. And so now therapists have this ability to partner with the companies like Journey Clinical and we pay a subscription fee basically, and we have access to prescribers that are trained. They prescribe it and then they send it to the client, and the client brings it to either our office or to their session if we're telehealth.
Got it. Okay. And then it's the distribution of the actual ketamine itself. It happens in front of you, like you're there to guide it?
Yes, they take I can tell you about the process, is that it's very similar with MDMA and psilocybin and LSD in the clinical trials as well, usually I'll meet with them 16 times before we'll ever even do a dose. Like I really want to understand their history, their trauma, the things that they want to work on. I want to really know them, and so we can use and utilize the medicine very accurately and intentionally. And so they get the prescription and then come to my office, and they will open up the lozenge and hold it in their mouth for 19 minutes. And then they spit it out. And then they have like sort of a dream-like, like a hypnosis experience for about 45 minutes. And then they slowly move out of that, and they're talking the whole time about what they're seeing. And so we're talking about the things that are coming up, and they're making usually new relationships to things that they hadn't thought about before. And then within 72 hours, we have an integration session, because that's when the neuroplasticity is the most active in the brain. And then a week later, we'll have another integration session. So there's a lot of conversation around what came up during the session, but they hold the lozenge, they spit it out. They're taking their blood pressure, usually when we're in telehealth.
So they spit it out, then you go through a 72-hour period where they then come back and you integrate. And when you say integrate, do you then teach them like new skills to use because the brain is in such a malleable place that you can provide these new skills?
That's a great question. It's more that sometimes that happens, yes. Like new ideas occur to them about, I mean, you know how it works with trauma is like there's this pathway that gets a groove into it. And suddenly with ketamine, they're like, oh, I've never thought of this other thing about the trauma that really matters. And so we'll talk about that and how it relates to them seeing what happened to them differently. And just, that's actually a representation of neurobiologically what's happening in the brain is those neurons are refiring and waking up and providing new connections. And that's literally what's happening in their story as well.
So, I mean, to me, that sounds amazing. Like to be able to help a client work through some process, I guess processing a situation or event um, in a way that they never have before, to be able to get past the event and no longer have it be um, this thorn on their side for the rest of their life, that they can finally just break free from it. And and I think, like, I'm trying to think like my counterparts, like the other folks
Mm-hmm.
who maybe
Mm-hmm.
aren't as open. I think the fear is, which I understand, is that things like this have gotten into the wrong hands, that not just the people receiving it, but mainly the practitioners, that they don't know how to do this. Like, I love hearing that you wait maybe 16 sessions before, whereas our leftist counterparts, within 15 minutes of meeting someone, will write a paper saying this person can get sex change. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
that's the fear that a lot of
Yeah.
conservatives
Yeah.
have, that it's like, well, what if they go to someone and within the first session they're thinking, well, let me just give them this, this lozenge and just have them, let's break through. And you're like, that's so irresponsible. You don't know anything
Yeah.
about this person. What if it opens up, doors that they didn't know were
Yeah.
there, and that can ruin them for life? So
Yeah.
I think maybe
Yeah.
that's how they're thinking. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and I'm also an addiction specialist. So the addict part, I think a lot of people obviously have, like, what if they say, wow, that felt so dang good, I want to go find it in the streets and do it some more
Yeah.
on my own? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, sure, people might think that way.
Yeah.
But those that I'm assuming those that have stuck with you for 16 sessions aren't the ones that are going to be like, I'm going to go find it in the street now.
Yeah.
I think the ones that are that I'm going to go find in the street are going to come to you and be like, I have to go to this woman for 16 sessions to get my drunk. No, thank you. I'm going to go to someplace else. So that solves that problem. And again, I think it's a trust issue with conservatives. Like, I don't trust the practitioner to be well equipped enough to know what they're doing. That's what I'm thinking.
I think you're onto something, because I do think there's a feeling that liberal therapists are cavalier with really dangerous treatments, which they have been. And it's completely appropriate fear. And also match with that is that ketamine really is not regulated in the sense that there's no certification that's required to do it. Someone who is not licensed can sit with you while you are having your ketamine experience. The part where it is really regulated is it has to be prescribed. So you're really trusting the integrity of the prescriber. And then what I would suggest is finding a therapist who says they're CAP trained, ketamine assisted psychotherapy trained, and find out what their process is. Don't meet with them just once, meet with them for at least 12, 16 sessions so that you really trust them, because the relationship is also the thing that really helps guide the effectiveness of the work. But I do understand that reticence. I think it's wise to be cautious. These are powerful medications, just like antidepressants are, and that if you take a handful of antidepressants, it's going to be a very different painful experience than taking the right dose.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like Klonopin, or,
Yeah.
any opioid or benzo that we have out there that we give to our clients comfortably for anxiety. It's just like, okay, I hate that. I don't know how many pills they're taking. I don't know if they're doing it, like they're supposed to. What if they're popping 5 instead of 1? So it's interesting that we don't have that same hesitancy towards those pills that are given. And some do. I mean, we've changed a lot. But it's this one, for some reason, I've noticed with ketamine, it's just like, oh, how dare you? This is so horrible. It's like, but can we learn first? Maybe it's not so horrible. We do EMDR, which is still, I mean, it's not a drug, but we're still creating this pathway. We're still trying to tap into a part of our brain that hasn't been really tapped into. So this is just assisting that a little further. And why not if it works and it's really highly supervised? I think that's what people need, is that it's highly supervised.
And I can say, I think the next thing that comes, I'm just imagining in my conversations with conservative therapists, the next thing I hear is, what if my client has a bad trip? Or is there propensity for a bad trip? And what I've discovered, so I've done hundreds of ketamine sessions now, and also served hundreds of clients over the past 6 years. And what I have experienced is that challenges that come up in the ketamine experience are really easily dealt with, because we've already laid the groundwork through the therapeutic relationship. I've heard their story. We already have tools. We've talked about what happens if something comes up that makes them sad or feel overwhelmed. We've prepared what to do. And usually it turns into a really insightful experience, because they can talk about it and view it differently and not be so fearful of it, but kind of grow big enough to contain it.
Nice. Okay. And I really wish more conservatives were open to hearing this knowledge. Because, I mean, to give an example, and not to name anybody, but, you posted in our group about this, especially about the new executive order that came out, which I do want to get into. And you got backlash. You even came to me and said, like, I didn't mean to cause a stir. I'm like, you didn't cause a stir. They just, they're not used to this, and I went in there to protect you and like, you're alone. This, it's that's not okay. But I can see how even just within our own field, our own people, our own group, that they're willing to just jump in and make assumptions and be like, this is horrible, this is from the devil. And I think that that's a big part of it too, is that there's a lot of Christians, as I am myself, and that have a hard time with these kinds of things, because they view it as more witchcraft. They view it that it's something more demonic, and that it's going against God's design. And I can understand that. So what's your answer to those statements?
Oh, you went right for the tough ones. I think it's understandable, and I actually appreciate the pushback, as weird as that sounds, because for years we've been living under a regime where no dissension is allowed. We're just canceled, or our license are taken away, or we lose our jobs. So I like that people can say, I disagree, because I feel like we're living in an era again in this Facebook group where we can actually discuss and disagree and have actual viewpoint diversity. So let me just say, like, I appreciate the pushback, and I want to understand other people's perspectives on this. So I'm grateful for that. And I think that it's understandable from the Christian perspective that there's a mistrust of anything that sounds shamanic or ceremonial. And I think that so many of the liberal, I don't know, mainstream TikTok liberal therapist is all about dismantling norms, self-referencing, anti-God, anti-family. It's so anti all the values that Christianity holds. Of course, you're going to be suspicious of anything that liberals are presenting into the therapy space, which has been psychedelic medicine. They've had a stronghold of the perspective. So I appreciate it, and I understand why people would be suspicious of it. What I can't answer is, because I'm not a Christian, I was raised Christian, I believe in God, I haven't relegated myself yet to the idea that I could be Christian. Much like I'm, you know, I'm learning to admit I'm conservative. Like that's my first step. And um, I don't have enough theological, philosophical ground to say, no, it's not demons, or yes, you're letting demons in. That's where I really need education, is how can I, if I can even be that bridge, because I want to understand. And I see it so much as your subconscious material comes up and you are connected with God, because that was my experience. Is I became conservative through my psychedelic experience, where I felt the presence of God after being an atheist for 2 decades. So I'm coming at it from this different perspective, where I'm like, oh, you feel God when you're in a psychedelic experience.
Right. That's amazing. Okay, I want to ask questions about that
Yeah.
too, but let me touch on that, because I do think I am a Christian, and I call myself a woo-woo Christian, because
Oh, yeah.
I believe in the supernatural. I believe in the powers that God has given us for us to then use to then bless others with our supernatural gifts. I do believe that they can be used for evil, and I do believe that they can be used for good. For instance, like I love Reiki. I perform Reiki on people, and a lot of Christians are against that. They think it's woo-woo magic, which I understand. But again, I am not in any which way, when I try to perform a healing, I don't do it because it's my power. I actually pray and believe that God's using me as a vessel to then help heal whatever it is the person needs healing in their body. So because of my intent, I do feel safe and comfortable. I don't welcome any evil spirits. I don't call on any other gods to help me out. It is my one and true God, and I work through the Holy Spirit. So I do. That's why I call myself a woo-woo Christian, because I do really believe that even in the Bible, we have seen miracle after miracle in the Bible, that these kinds of things are actually called upon us to use in God's name and in God's glory. It's a gift that was given to us, the supernatural gifts. Again, you can find that anywhere in the Bible. I mean, I think every freaking book has that, some kind of miracle or some kind of laying of hands or some kind of prophecy or something has been done in God's name to help another individual out. So this to me is just another one of those tools. This to me is I've given something to you to help heal this person, as long as I'm there. I'm at the foundation. I'm in the room with you. That it's not your gift. It's not your power and your might that's doing it. You are not the God in the room. I am God. I am through Christ. I have given you this gift, and please use it to help my children, because that's what we are to God. So that's how I justify it as a Christian. My intent is never to be anyone's God. My intent is never to glorify myself as a God. My intent is never to use gifts to hurt or harm anyone. And if I am led that God's like, yeah, you're not helping this person, which has happened to me, I don't. I listen. There was in Reiki, there's a lot that you do where someone's spirit could jump on you, could enter the room, could attack you, could linger in your home because you're taking them out. And it's not an exorcism; it's just this ailment that's been hurting them, and that ailment has some kind of energy of some sort, and that can linger around you. And God has said, like, don't do that. You're going to get harmed. You're going to get hurt. That this person is not assigned to you. Let somebody else help them. And I've been very honest in saying I'm not the one to help. Here's some referrals from other people, just like you do in therapy. So I listen, but again, it's dependent on the practitioner to have ethics and morals. And there's not a lot of us that carry ethics and morals, especially morals. because a lot of times morals, believe it or not, I believe come from God. And so there's not a lot of us that we can depend on, that we can feel that safe to say, I know she's not going to lead me astray. I know I'm protected. I know that she listens to God. I know that if God tells her no, she will not touch me. She will not harm me. So I think that might help the Christians out there. It's like, look to our Bible. I mean, we use these amazing gifts. They're all in there that we can use. I mean, in Acts alone, lay your hands on people and save them and help them. It's all there for us to read, but for some reason, and I know the reason, it's because of our human nature. We have deemed it all witchcraft, and I don't believe that. I don't believe that it's all witchcraft.
Yeah, thank you for explaining and contemplating that with me, because I was wondering that, because from an outsider, when I look at the Bible, there's so many miracles and visions and that are confirmations of God and supernatural experiences. And so I was wondering, do people almost feel like it's too godlike to have those experiences? Like they can only be relegated to the past somehow, and that because we're so fallible in the present, we're assuming we're gods. So you kind of touched on that. And yeah, I mean, I really think the way I've been thinking about this a lot is the way to help Christians feel comfortable with psychedelic assisted therapy as it is coming through right now with vets and fast tracking and research is to train faith leaders. I think I would love to connect with pastors, and I know a rabbi in Austin that I'm going to be talking with about this, because I think that would be the way to help people trust the process and know that the person who is crafting or guiding the process is godly.
Right.
Yeah.
I sat down with someone who I admire very much, who's a Christian and has, a prominent position in the field, in the Christian realm, who is also in the field, and it's interesting. And this is not, and I'm not knocking this person. I'm not saying anything negative about them, but it was interesting that they believed my yoga, because I like to do yoga here, was what opened the door to these demonic things that make me then want to do Reiki. And I didn't push back, because I come from a church years ago, another lifetime, that thinks that way and teaches those kinds of things. So I understand where she was coming from. And I also knew pushback with someone like that doesn't do anything. It doesn't help. So I just didn't. But it was interesting to me to see like that is what we are fighting against. There is a theology out there that really truly believes that just because I did yoga, now I have these spirits inside of me that will then do harm to other people through other practices. And I am far from that. I mean, even when I go to yoga, I make sure the classes that I go to aren't chanting yoga classes. Like it's strictly exercise. Like I just want to exercise. That's really why I go to yoga. But it's, you look, you're like, okay, is this one going to be a spiritual one? And I have even done the spiritual ones, but when they chant to whatever it is they're chanting to, I'm talking to God. Like I'm in the room with the Holy Spirit. Like you can't affect me that way, because I have such a great relationship with my Lord. Like there's no penetrating me in any which way with your demonic stuff. So sure, it's a slap in the face, but I also like have such a tenderness for them that I'm just like, I get it. I've been there. I understand. It's what we're taught in the Christian world. And unfortunately, that is not biblical to me. To me, from when I read my Bible and how I perceive God and the gift of the Holy Spirit that was given to us by Him, that is actually the opposite. We are supposed to be moving in the Spirit. We are supposed to be counselors like the Holy Spirit is. We are supposed to lay our hands on people and help them through God's gift, through God's Spirit. Like that is what I believe we're called to do. And it's the Christians that are stopping us from doing that, ironically. So I encourage you to continue looking in the Christian realm, because there is a place for you there. There really, I really do think, and this isn't a prophecy or anything like that, I really do believe that we need more of you in the realm to show like, no, we can love Christ, we can love God, we can serve him, and we can also be a vessel for him to then help others find healing. That's what people want.
It's such a good reminder that what stuck out to me so much about what you just said is that that it doesn't help to push back when you're meeting that kind of resistance. And I can feel that with progressive liberal ideology, not to conflate the two necessarily, but there's something about backing away when you meet that kind of firmness and belief, and then creating something that's so powerful and ethical and moral that they'll be drawn to it and see the good in it. It's almost like a solution focused therapy process. You don't focus on the problem, you imagine the preferred future. And that's, I feel like, what we're doing, Wes and I, especially with the podcast and the book, is that we really want people to see the goodness and the power and the healing potential of psychedelics, and conservatives to feel safe and move to give their voices to the movement, because otherwise it will be captured and that will go to that far end that is only about privilege and power and oppression and delusional beliefs. So and I feel that respect too.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
go for it.
Could
Go
you
for it.
then maybe explain to everyone what this executive order actually does do and say, so people understand?
Sure. Yeah, and I won't say it as well as my lawyer friend Wes, but basically it says that Ibogaine can now be studied because Trump is saying that Ibogaine has been the highest controlled substance. It's been even hard to study it. The FDA doesn't approve studies because it's scheduled Schedule 1 or Schedule 3. I get them mixed up. It's scheduled so he's asking to reduce that restriction, and he's giving federal money to clinical trials. So it's been really effective, Ibogaine in particular, with vets, but people have had to go out of the country. And all the nonprofits that are working with vets are taking them out of the country where the protocols aren't there. I'm sure they're very safe, effective programs, but we really want to bring it back to the US and study it and have protocols and clinical procedures around it. And it is one of the more dangerous psychedelics. You can have cardiac issues with it, and it's a 24-hour experience. So it's not a short experience. So I know. He fast tracked research on that. And then also he specifically mentioned psilocybin, MDMA, and LSD. Those are already in clinical trials and have been studied for years here. And he's saying once they hit phase 3, instead of them taking years, he's hoping they will take only 50 days. So like MDMA is in phase 3. It got reviewed by the FDA 2 years ago and rejected due to a couple of things. And so they have been redoing those trials. And I would imagine when they come up for review, it's going to be a very different process this time around because of this executive order. So what I've seen people talk about that are doing the clinical trials is that right now there are just dozens of people that are eligible for the trials. With this executive order, it means thousands of people could be eligible for trials. So it's not legalizing psychedelics. It's not meaning they're not going to be researched. It's meaning that the review process is not going to be as administratively laborious. And so these medicines could be used sooner.
Yeah. And why not? Why not study them? Like, can
Yeah.
we just study them? I want to see what happens in the trials. Like, do we get great results? Like, do people get healed? Do people stop, using drugs? And do they have nights where they're not having these horrible dreams anymore and they're able to sleep through the night? Like, just why not? Can we just try it out? So, yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I don't think people understand what that executive order actually did. So I appreciate you kind of just
Well,
saying.
it's understandable because I think if you're not in the world of it, you don't, what it sounds like is that, oh my gosh, these are going to be legal soon and it doesn't feel safe. They don't realize they've been studied for years, except for Ibogaine, but everything else has been studied for years and has shown tons of promise. I mean, in the MDMA trial, so certified for MDMA assisted therapy as well. And those trials were so successful, it's considered a breakthrough therapy, which means the vets and the people that qualified for the trials and had the levels of PTSD at the beginning didn't even register as having PTSD by the sixth session.
Wow. And
Yeah,
see, that's amazing to me. And they
yeah.
didn't go off and start doing the street drug. Like they just,
No,
they were, yeah,
no,
okay.
no.
So that solves our
Yeah,
problem because that's the
yeah.
biggest fear that I think people have. Is like, are they going to go find it on the street now and use it? It's like, well, no, they
You
didn't.
know, I think it's really what I've noticed is that when people are fearful of it, they talk about the drug. Like, is the drug addictive? Is the psychedelic going to propel me into drug addiction? It's an understandable fear. But I think what's different about psychedelic psychotherapy is that it's the context that you're doing it in. So you're not doing a drug and then you're better, like an antidepressant or something. You are undergoing therapy. You're going through 6 hours of intensive therapy 4 times or 5 times with MDMA. And then you're having 3 or 4 follow-ups. It's like a long process, and you're working on.
Sorry, and
Oh,
I
go
do remember Wes actually talking about that in the podcast that you did before, where he was explaining like, yeah, it's not an SSRI or antidepressant or something where that you just pop and you know it's going to work. Like you know what it's going to do and it's going to do its job, and you don't have to create the mood or you don't have to have the experience that set for you. You just take it and it does its job. Whereas something like this, it's like, no, the setting matters, your
Yes,
mindset matters, your intentions matter. Those things do matter in order for this to go the right path that we want it to go to. And again, it goes back to this really relies on the practitioner,
yes,
the person
it does.
actually leading this. So I again understand everyone's hesitancy because it's always been the left that always goes crazy and wild. And so, you know, it's like, okay, so can we then maybe admit that if it is the left that we so blame for everything, that if it's in the hands of a conservative, that it could possibly go right, that it could
Yeah,
actually maybe happen the way it's supposed to happen. So why not take control over that? Why not capture that just as much as we captured the gender cult that was going crazy and rampant?
yeah,
Why don't
yeah,
we capture this as well and make it ours,
exactly.
and we do it safely and
Yeah, yeah.
you know, maybe godly even? Like, I mean, God, you know, how awesome would that be?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the first ever 1960s trials of LSD was given to seminary students. So it's like full circle. But I agree, because this is what I feel really passionate about, is because I went through these programs and I can tell you, like someone very beautifully said, who messaged me from the group, is she's like, I paid $10,000 to learn about my white privilege. And unfortunately, that is what the main part of the trainings were organized around, where I thought they were going to be about consciousness and states of consciousness and interventions. And there was some review of clinical trials, which was good. And that was the best part, and research on the neurobiological mechanisms. But it was mainly, oh, it's so painful to even remember. It was like a week of talking about white privilege and power and oppression. We had 2 residencies, and the first week was power and oppression. The second week was experiential. But it was, we had to use pronouns, and it was just, it's very captured, and the field itself is very captured.
Right. Right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And then this is my final question for you,
Yeah.
because it's a good segue. You
Hmm.
said that you became a conservative through your experience with psychedelics. Am I
Yeah.
correct? Is that what I heard? Can you please explain to me how that works? Because I'm ready to give this to every leftist I know, so that we can have more conservatives on our side.
Isn't it funny? It's like the opposite of tune in, drop out, the Timothy Leary thing. Um, this is I think I'm kind of a unique, maybe not unique. I haven't heard a lot of voices about this, but um, The thing that psychedelics do is they amplify. They amplify what is happening in the set and setting, the mindset, the set and setting. They amplify what's happening inside psychologically. They're neutral substances. And I think a lot of people understandably fear that if you take a psychedelic, you're going to run off and join a polycule and change your gender, you know, and exit society and, you know, join a commune. And my experience with clients and also with myself has been the opposite, is that I have a diagnosis of PTSD. I went through abuse in my early adolescence and adulthood. And so I had the appropriate diagnosis to have ketamine prescribed to me. And because I was spearheading this in our clinic, I felt like this is ethical for me to do, to see what the experience is if I'm going to provide it for other people. And so I had, and I talk about this in our book, The Conservative Case for Psychedelics. I had my one ketamine journey, and it was, ketamine is also a psychedelic, a non-traditional psychedelic that produces something close to a near-death experience. And you know how in near-death experiences, they talk about meeting an unconditional, loving God force. Well, I met that. I felt God in my ketamine journey. And this is after 2 decades of studying Buddhism intensively and really identifying as an atheist. My roots are in Christianity, and I grew up in the South. But I really rejected that in my teens and 20s and until I was 50. And that was the first of a many layered process in 2020 with everything that was happening in the world. Suddenly I was facing everything happening in the world, in my city, in my field, with God. And I was realizing what was happening in the world in a different way. I moved from a liberal viewpoint very naturally into, I think it's a conservative viewpoint. I'm still hesitant to say it because I can't quite admit it, but this seems to be what happened. Instead of seeing, gosh, so much happened. I saw through what liberal progressive ideology was saying. And instead of allowing everyone to have free self-expression and identify, because that was really big in 2020, and pronouns, I realized it was a sham, and it was ridiculous, and it was the fact that we couldn't agree or ask questions meant that it was an entire agenda. And it was so clear after my ketamine journey, and after especially feeling the presence of God. And since then, a lot has happened in my life that has brought me closer to God, and I've recognized it's the truth. I mean, I've stood up against gender ideology. I've been speaking up in the woke capture of our field. So a lot has propelled me towards that.
Oh, Karen, my heart is jumping for joy for you. That's incredible. That's incredible. That gives me such a warm and fuzzy feeling I can't explain. And not for our field, but for you, because I know once God's in your heart, I know that nothing's impossible. Like I just know that he's taken the wheel now, and he's going to use you exactly how you were intended to be used, for his glory and his truth. Because you're right, God is the foundation of truth. And so I'm just very excited for you to kind of see where God's going to take this. Because you're right, there's not a lot of conservatives doing this, what you're doing. You're writing a book as well. You have a lawyer friend who's a conservative. That's also rare. And the two of you fighting together, I mean, my goodness, that is an army in and of itself that God is going to use. So I'm so excited about what's going to happen, and I feel very honored to know you, that this is going to be great. This is going to be very cool. This is, I'm excited for you. What an amazing experience.
Thank you, Soad. I feel that every night and every morning. I'm saying, okay, God, if I'm meant to say something, or use me as you can, because this medicine is so powerful. I want people to, half the country, to be able to feel comfortable with it and to understand it and to not be fearful of it or have a misunderstanding. And if it's available to them, I want to reassure them. And the other thing I really feel motivated is all these therapists have come to me and said, okay, how do I get trained? And I'm like, I don't want to send them to the existing trainings because they are so captured. And I'm like, okay, how do we create a conservative psychedelic training program?
Please do so. That's desperately needed. That would be amazing if you guys could do that. Oh my God. Please,
Yeah.
please consider it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to answer your question about
Yeah.
conservatism, like what it is, and maybe your hesitancy to call yourself that, because yes, you're right. A lot of newly conservatives are like, I don't know if I'm conservative. I just don't believe what the left believes. So if that makes me a conservative, okay, fine. But it's not really what I think I am.
Well, we've been taught to despise and loathe it. And so it's really hard to overcome that.
Correct. Absolutely. 100%. So how I try to describe it is in two ways. One is if you're politically conservative, and then there's the values that are conservative. And I think that those two need to stay in their own bubbles. That sometimes what happens is when you say a conservative, people immediately say, oh, you're a Republican. It's like, no,
right.
I'm not, because I'm really not. I'm an independent. I want to be able to vote how I want to vote. I don't like either side, but I do tend to vote Republican just because they tend to have policies that I agree with, because the policies are more conservative. So that's one thing. And then political, like the policies are that, we put America first. We're not socialists. You have accountability, less government. So small government, very, very small government, that grassroots efforts are better than the federal government over you. What else is more conservative? It's more pro-life. So policies like that we don't necessarily govern the world, that we more govern America, that we don't get too involved in foreign politics, that we just focus on the American people. The social network, like welfare and things like that, are limited, that are not widely spread to whoever. So that makes me more of a conservative politically. Then conservative values-wise is I believe in the nuclear family. I believe and support a husband and a wife married to have children. I don't agree with gay marriages. I don't, what else would it be? I do like having God at the center of it, but that's not always conservative values either. I just happen to be someone who believes that God needs to be the center of it. I believe in, a conservative would believe in objective reality, not subjective reality, so that there are truths that we live by. Usually those truths come from God. Not always. The ones, it's interesting, the ones that are conservative that don't have God at the foundation, still on the outskirts believe in all the things that God lays as the foundation. They're just not ready to admit that it's God providing that foundation. That's for a theologian to get into, but I do believe that our morals as conservatives are founded from good and evil, and good and evil come from God. And so the understanding of good and evil come from God. And a lot of times I think what happens is that conservatives who don't believe in God do believe there's a good and evil, but don't lay that good and evil foundation on to God. They're just like, oh, we just kind of come up with what's good and evil. That's up to us to decide. And it's like, that's very subjective. Be careful, because you're getting into subjective territory, because then what's good and evil? Who decides? So yeah, that's more conservative values and beliefs that then perhaps guide you to then believe in the policies that conservatives then lay out. That's conservative. I mean, it's still loose. Like, for instance, with liberals, I mean, the biggest difference with liberals and conservatives are that there's objective reality. that's mainly the biggest basis, that your opinion is not truth. If you notice, liberals like to walk around saying my truth, your truth, everyone's truth. What they mean is my opinion. That's what they mean. And liberals really hold that as God, as like Bible. Whereas conservatives are like, no, those are just opinions. We need to have a foundation of what truth is. Everybody needs a baseline. In our field, we always ask, what's your baseline? So that we can determine how to get you back to quote unquote normal. Conservatives actually do have a normal. They do believe that God's design is the baseline. That's what we work from. And then anything else is just opinions. So that is the biggest difference that I have noticed between a conservative and a liberal. And it sounds like you came to a point of going, yeah, there's a baseline. There's a foundational truth. Everything else is an opinion, and you're not going to make your truth my God. That's not going to work for me. I'm done with doing that. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I hope that kind of answers it. It is still kind of vague, but it gives some.
No, I like how you siloed those out, the values and the politics. And the thing that I would add about moving from left to right, as I've done, is that there is an imposition of an oppressor-oppressed narrative that is in every single interaction, conversation. And that's why you don't want to go to a liberal therapist if you are a conservative values human. Because you won't get the help that you really need, which is that neutrality, that agreement on objective truth. You'll get a whole superimposition of this oppressor-oppressed narrative, and you'll get this guilt and all of this put on you.
I agree. And that's a great point. If you go to, let's say I had an instance with a friend, we'll say a husband. I had an instance with my husband, and he treated me horribly, and it hurt my feelings, and I got so upset, and how dare he? And you go to a leftist therapist and say all this. I mean, at the end of the session, you could be like, I'm getting divorced, because my leftist therapist was very much like, screw him. Your feelings matter. You hold your boundaries. How dare he? Whereas
the patriarchy.
Yes. And what race is he? Because if he's this race, if he's a white man, then yes, my God, they're the worst. How could you? They have so much privilege and so forth. Whereas a conservative would say, well, what's your part in it? What did you do? How did you respond? And how could you have made it better? We can't change him, whatever it is he is. But where's your role in all of this? And divorce would never come out of our mouth. Separate from you being beaten to a pulp, of course, yes, you should probably leave your husband for your safety. But if it's just some random, he didn't put the toilet seat down, we're not going to sit there and talk about divorce at the end of session. We're going to look at how you had a part in that. What is it that you also do that annoys the hell out of him? So that's the huge difference. It's just this idea of every individual has a God, and that God is themselves, and everyone around them has to live up to that religion that you make up every single day. We don't know what religion you're going to feel the next day, but whatever it is, we have to tippy toe and walk on eggshells to accommodate your religion each and every day. Whereas conservatives are like, nope, our foundation is the same. Our foundation is at God, and we know what God is. We know who he is, and that's what we believe. And there are some biological facts that are rooted in it. And that is where we work from. And everyone's consistent in it. Everyone understands the same thing. It's not my God, your God, my truth, your truth. We have a foundation that is universal.
And we become resilient. We help each other be resilient in meeting the challenges of life. Whereas I'm thinking about psychedelic therapy, where it's so important to have, because you're in such a vulnerable state, it's so important to have a conservative therapist, I think, because a liberal therapist in a psychedelic state, if someone is showing fear or difficulty, having some kind of traumatic memory or image, the liberal therapist might say, oh, yes, you are a victim, and you will remain a victim to this oppressor. whatever it is, societal oppressor. Whereas the conservative therapist is going to say, how do we help you meet the challenges that are real and true and grow and be able to be there for your community and for yourself and your family more? It's vastly different.
So different. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, welcome to the conservative world.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it.
I love being here. I love being here.
I love that you're on our team. That makes me so happy. We need you. We need you.
Well, thank you so much for talking today. And I hope that we can have more of these, because I just saw that the Department of Justice lowered the scheduling for marijuana. So there's all kinds of issues and things coming up that are going to be relevant in our conservative worlds that I'd love to talk with you about.
I would love it. Thank you for having me, Karen. It was so good to finally put a face to the name and get you off of the Facebook group and into life. And soon one day I'll actually have a real life hug with you, I hope. So
that sounds great.
Nice. It'll be wonderful.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.